Hello, friends, and welcome into College Football Now. I am Tom Downey. Alongside me is James Yoder here live from the Cotton Bowl Media Center, James, right here in Dallas, Texas.
Tom, big-time journalism stuff we're doing here, so I am happy to be here. The only guys, by the way, in this whole place doing a live show here the day before the games. It's our official college football preview. We're going to go over both games, Tom.
Of course.
Then look at a little 2019 Heisman, then talk recruiting towards the end of the hour, so it should be a fun hour show.
And some Tyree Jackson transfer candidates or destinations as well. We'll start things off, of course, with the Cotton Bowl. That's where we are. Notre Dame versus Clemson. Clemson, James, the heavy favorite. They won't have Dexter Lawrence, along with a couple other guys, in one of the more notable storylines over a failed drug test.
Sure. And so, Tom, this is... I don't know how big of a story it is because of how good Clemson's defensive line is to begin with. So if this was another team, let's just say it was Notre Dame's first-round top 15 pick defensive lineman, it would be a huge deal for Notre Dame to lose it. But Clemson has like 4 NFL players plus guys who are high 4-star, 5-star freshmen
that are going to be NFL players in a couple more years.
So the stacked ranking, the stacked classes Clemson's put together up there with Alabama, Ohio State, some of the best talent in the country. I don't think this impacts them as much as it would another team, maybe a Notre Dame, Oklahoma, something like that. But
if they
the
didn't
betting line has come down by 1.5, 2 points since that suspension was announced. So it has affected things in the line and the eyes of the gamblers, big-time gamblers like us. We might be putting some money on Notre Dame, given that 12.5 points, and that's making the line come down. Clemson is less of a favorite than they were when this matchup came out a few weeks back.
So as you guys can see, the line actually opened at 11, went all the way up to 14, which I found fairly high, and is now kind of settled in around that 12.5 range, James.
Yeah, sure. And Tom, what are you thinking about it? I know we're going to give our picks here later in the show, but where are you thinking on this game in general? Don't give away your pick yet, but where are you leaning?
I find it interesting just how people have not really bought in or believed at all in Notre Dame this year. It was constantly like, oh, this is the week Notre Dame loses. They're nowhere near as good as a Clemson and Oklahoma and Alabama. I think you're going to see Notre Dame compete in this one. I would be very surprised if you saw Clemson just destroy Notre Dame like, say, they got destroyed a couple years ago in the BCS title game against Alabama.
Sure. And I believe that because of the fact that Notre Dame's a new player in the college football playoff, Oklahoma, Alabama, Clemson, they were all here last year. They've all been here multiple times, 3+ for all 3 of those teams. That Notre Dame is the forgotten powerhouse. But this is a team that beat a Michigan team that was right there at the end of the year, in the beginning of the year, that crushed a lot of strong teams that some people thought their schedule was going to be too difficult for them to get through. So I think Notre Dame's got a better chance than people give them credit for. We got to remember that Trevor Lawrence, Tom, for all his accolades come out of high school, for the future-looking draft stuff that we talked about earlier in the day today and yesterday about how he's guaranteed first pick in the draft in a couple years from now, he's still a true freshman, Tom. And prior to last year, true freshmen just didn't win national championships. Of course, they didn't win even college football playoff games going forward. So I think that is still a factor that not too many people are talking about. He has only started 9 games in his college career. I know Ian Book's about the same thing. They both started, I believe, 9 games so far. But nevertheless, I do think that his freshman capabilities is something that we're not talking about enough.
All right, the Cotton Bowl here, some of the more betting lines, what's happened here with the bets and the money. Interestingly enough, James, a lot of action on Notre Dame.
Yep.
And the line hasn't changed all that drastically despite that.
Yeah, Tom, the public in general, Notre Dame is the Cowboys, is the Yankees, is the Lakers of their sport. And so you get a lot of the fair weather fan, the guy heading to Vegas for a work meeting in early December. He's going to put some money on Notre Dame because that's the team, his granddaddy he rooted for. So I'm not surprised that the money is on Notre Dame. You look at that line and you think to yourself, wow, I can see Notre Dame sticking within 2 touchdowns at Clemson, and that's kind of why this line has continued to come down. But it is an interesting betting matchup, given that no teams like Alabama, when these spreads are both 2-touchdown favorites, times no teams in the college football playoff era have been this big of underdogs like we're seeing in this games, because these games come up tomorrow.
It's highly
very unusual. I think it speaks not just to the perceived matchups, but just how strong Clemson and Alabama have been over the last 4 or 5 years.
It's been Bama versus Clemson, Bama versus Clemson.
It's the Cavs versus the Warriors. Now, obviously, the Cavs aren't there anymore, but that's the kind of matchup we're dealing with, that no one can really foresee a reason that these other teams, Oklahoma, who looks so good all year offensively, but people are like, well, their defense, Clemson, Alabama's going to score at will. It's going to be 65-40. Like, they're going to score that. So I think, in general, Notre Dame being that national power, you're going to see a lot of the public money come in on them.
You've also seen quite a bit of the money and the bets come in on the over in this game, listed right now 56.5. Range opened at 55, has kind of gone up since then. And as we often know, James, and as we often see, The public loves to bet the over.
Yeah.
Life's too short to bet the under, right?
Well, Tom, I actually think when you think about this game, the other game, I'm so excited to see what happens with the other game that we'll talk about here a few minutes coming up, the Alabama and Oklahoma one. Thinking about the over in that one reminds me a lot of that Chiefs-Rams game a few weeks back, where the Monday night game where, oh gosh, the over under 75 points, whatever it is. This one is so high. I think that was like 66, 67, whatever it is. I can't, we're going to talk about our predictions here towards the end of the show, Tom, but this is about what the over-under should be. I don't see Notre Dame dropping 40 points or 35 points, so it's tough for me to kind of think that the over goes, but I think if Clemson covers that 11, 12, 13 point spread, whatever it turns out to be, then I think the over goes under, but I think you'll see it in my prediction towards the end of the show. I don't think they're going to cover it.
All right, who you got, folks? Let us know in the comments section. Type C for Clemson and ND for Notre Dame. James, of course, will hold off on our predictions here in a little bit, but I think we're in agreement there. It's a big spread to actually cover.
Yeah, sure. It's
a playoff game.
For a playoff game, Tom. And you see a lot in matchups on a particular campus. It's at Clemson. Oh, gosh, that's why they're a 2-point favorite. But this is a neutral site game, Tom, and I believe from what I've seen walking around downtown Dallas just in the last 24, 48 hours, plus what some of these people, the sports business people, put out tweets where the sales have been. I think this Dallas crowd, the Cotton Bowl at Jerry World, is going to be 75% Notre Dame fans, because you're going to get casual Notre Dame guy who lives an hour from Dallas coming in for the game. He's been a fan all his life, not necessarily the Notre Dame grads or anything like that. You get the casual fan. That's going to be Notre Dame contingent. Clemson, for all the success they've had in the last 4 or 5 years under Dabo, they are not a traditional national power, Tom. They are much like Oregon.
They're a recent power.
Yeah, we saw a few years ago Oregon in the national championship game in Dallas, and the same against Ohio State. It was 85% Ohio State fans, Tom, because Ohio State is a national audience where Oregon, frankly, doesn't. Notre Dame travels, Ohio State travels. I actually think this is going to be a 70%, 65% Notre Dame crowd. It's going to feel more like a home game to them, so they've got that going for them. So I think Clemson wins the game, Tom. We'll give our previews here in a few minutes, but I think they're going to cover. I think Notre Dame will cover that spread.
I hear too, and we've seen not very many big spreads in the CFP era.
And so what we say,
they've mostly been big or
what we say
smaller ones.
The spread is 11 right now, or 12 and a half?
12 and a half.
12 and a half right now. So that, Tom, ties this now. We're going to talk about the spreads here in a second, but this ties for the biggest favorites in the college football playoff era.
If it holds.
Yeah, if it holds, exactly. So them, and then the other game we'll get to in a second is actually bigger. So the two biggest favorites in college football playoff era are this year's semifinal games. Alabama being the recipients of a lot of those big point spreads. They've basically been favored by double digits over everybody. And you look at their games this year, up into the Georgia game, they didn't have a game anyone hold them within 3 touchdowns, Tom, and that includes LSU, that was in the top 5 at the time they played. And so I think the general public is saying, like, wow, it's only a 14-point spread. How is Oklahoma gave up 40 to Kansas? How are they going to hold Alabama to less than 70, right? Tua is a little bit banged up, but focusing on this game here, Ian Book is potential difference maker. Certainly,
the offense has drastically changed since he took over after that Vanderbilt survival.
Sure. They didn't have the same running back that they have. They're starting running
Dexter
back
Williams
out
came
for
back
the first few games of the year.
boost.
Now, they do have one of the best offensive linemen is hurt for this game. He went out earlier in the year, so there's some good questions. But with Clemson having the defensive lineman who is injured, I think there are neutralized a little bit. So this is, in my college football fandom, I am excited about this game for the reason is I actually have some in my mind. I think this game can really go a lot of directions. I think the other game is going to go – the winners will score 45 or 50 points. This one could be a 10-7 game time. It could be 14-13. It could also be 31-0 like they did Ohio State a couple years ago.
It could be that Alabama-Michigan State type game.
Yeah,
you could have seen. I kind of lean more towards more of an ugly, drag-it-out fight. But, look, we've seen this before. The big favorites – they don't always cover, let alone win, James.
For sure.
Not always.
And we see this time. It is basically whoever Alabama is playing in the
semifinals.
Right? But you notice that there has been 4 years of the college football playoff, 3 games, so 12 games. 5 of them are only 4 of them are a touchdown favorite. I guess the 2 this year will be on top of that. So more than half the games have been within a touchdown spread, and a lot of them time have been 1 or 2 points. The Alabama Clemson national championship games have been 1-2 point spreads the last couple of years. So this is a new thing in this new college football playoff era to have 2 teams be drastic favorites. And Tom, if we look towards next season, and we're talking about our Heisman here in a second. Tell me how Alabama Clemson won't be in the national title game again next year. Tell me a scenario where it happens.
Injuries at the quarterback position.
Sure. I mean, because they're going to have
Jalen
the
Hurts
best two quarterbacks.
transfer, Tua goes down with another ankle or knee injury. Trevor Lawrence goes down, and the backups aren't ready to go.
And I know Justin Herbert's coming back for Oregon, but I think Alabama Clemson have by far and away the best two quarterbacks in college football as far as championship level mixed with the team and the coach they have coming back next season. So I think this Warriors-Cavs dynamic of Clemson Alabama is not going away. And with the recruiting classes, both teams in development, I think the rich are getting richer in college football. It's Clemson, it's Alabama, it's Ohio State, Oklahoma are the teams that are right there, in Georgia in the last couple of years. That they,
Georgia should
three
be good again
three
next
of those 5 teams are in the playoff basically every year, and the other 2 are the ones that just miss out, like we saw with Ohio State the last 2 years.
If I tell you Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia aren't all in it, or at least 2 of those aren't in it, you'd be fairly stunned, right?
I would be absolutely
There's
stunned.
no parity right now in college football.
Yeah, there's no parity at all, Tom. And it's just that much more emphasis on winning your conference. Because back in the day, you could, you're a Big Ten team. Ohio State goes to the Rose Bowl, and then you get the Orange Bowl if you're a 2-loss team. But that doesn't seem to matter as much. We see the de-emphasis of these bowl games lately. But Notre Dame, Tom, has had some success here and there with bowl games. But one stat I thought was pretty interesting. They have lost 7 straight BCS or New Year's Six type bowl games. This will be their first appearance in the college football playoff, obviously. But 6 years ago, they lost to Alabama, brutally defeated by Alabama in the BCS National Championship.
Game was over by halftime.
42-14. It was like 35-7 or something in the first half.
It was long over.
That was a definite blowout there. But you got to go back, Tom, into the early 90s since Notre Dame has won a BCS level, New Year's Six level college football bowl game. They've got some wins over LSU. They've got some wins over Rutgers in the last few years in those bowl games.
Back when Rutgers wasn't total garbage.
Yeah, so these Notre Dame big game woes, Brian Kelly is kind of, he's under the gun in some regards. Is he going to get Notre Dame back to where they were in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and prior to that to compete with Alabama and not just show up and get beat by 40 points in the semifinal like Clemson?
And Clemson has had some similarities there as well with their recent bowl games against the semifinals. And a very common theme there, Alabama.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, they played each other, Tom, 3 straight years, 2 straight national championships in the 2015, 2016 season, 2017 season. It was the semifinal game where Alabama was really the team that snuck in, that they didn't get in the conference championship game last year. They played. So these 2 teams potentially are on a collision course to face each other in the playoff for 4 straight years, Clemson and Alabama. I think that's the matchup, obviously, that's most likely because of the massive favorites. I think it's a matchup very few people want to see again because it doesn't
the same.
It feels very much the same. I also don't think it gives little hope to any other colleges. Obviously, Urban Meyer moving on from Notre Dame. Who's the power in the Big Ten that can make a run at these
You're
teams?
hoping it's Michigan.
It's hoping it's Michigan, but Ohio State fans are hoping it's Ryan Day. But are they proven? Who is the team if both these teams get blown out, Oklahoma and Notre Dame? Who's the team from the Big 12? Who's the independent that can compete with these teams? I don't see it. Certainly don't see one in the Pac-12.
All right, some storylines to monitor here for the Cotton Bowl. The big one, of course, Dexter Lawrence, 2 other players suspended for a failed drug test. On the Notre Dame side, James, in recent years, as you mentioned not that long ago, they tend to have some issues in big games. Not quite big game Brian yet for Notre Dame.
Ooh, I like
and
that.
Clemson, as you mentioned, the big, heavy favorites in this matchup.
For sure, Tom. The
record-setting favorites.
The Lawrence suspension is interesting, but I said they've got Clelin Ferrell. They've got a couple other guys that are first 2-round draft picks. I don't think it's as big of a deal as if it was Notre Dame's top 10 NFL draft pick that was suspended. We talked about those Notre Dame big game woes, Tom. 7 straight New Year's Six or BCS level bowl games. You're going back well over 20 years since they have won a game of this caliber in college football. And then Clemson's just such a huge favorite, Tom, but 12.5 point spread. It was high as 14, as low as 11. So this Dexter Lawrence suspension has made a little bit of an impact on the line, but not a ton. I think the game might come down to these guys we're going to look at here next. Take us through Ian Book, Trevor Lawrence, the freshman phenom Trevor Lawrence, the future #1 pick in the draft, as some draft experts like yourself are saying.
It's funny. There's some similarities here in the way that they've impacted their offense, and there are other ones with the halfbacks that we'll get into as well. But Ian Book comes in. The Notre Dame offense looked putrid against Ball State, and they lost to Vanderbilt as well. And then Ian Book comes in, and the offense looks completely different since then. Meanwhile, Trevor Lawrence comes in and adds an aerial threat to the Clemson offense that Kelly Bryant really didn't bring to the program. And the numbers aren't great because, A, there have been a lot of blowouts for both these teams, and B, they didn't play the entire season, so it's not quite the Kyler Murray-esque numbers there, but not that many turnovers, a lot of touchdowns as well. Both these quarterbacks can make plays. We'll see how Trevor Lawrence fares against, I think, perhaps the best defense he's faced all year, and a little bit bigger stage than just, say, the ACC title game versus Pitt, who's not very good.
For sure. And so, Tom, what do you think about this this college football playoff media center here? Not as buzzy as I would have thought following that press conference we just got done watching. Brian Kelly, Dabo Swinney's press conference. A lot of people moving in and out and around this. One thing I took away from that press conference is how talkative Dabo is and how little
and Brian
Kelly does. Brian Kelly, Tom, 5 to 10 word answers. Dabo, 5 to 10 minute answers. It was crazy. They were up there for 32 minutes or something like that on stage together. I would say Brian Kelly spoke for less than 4 minutes, and Dabo the entire rest of the time. He would go on these long, drawn-out answers, and the media only got it 7, 8 questions total. I mean, it was a very kind of a brief press conference because of Dabo's ability to speak and break down, elongate his answers. So, Clemson, Notre Dame, Tom, what do you think about this quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, the freshman phenom that made Kelly Bryant, who got them to the playoff last year, made him transfer out? He'll be at Missouri next year, taking over for Drew Lock. But what is your takeaway from what you've seen out of him so far this season?
Immensely impressive. I mean, I don't really think there's any other way to go about it. He's accurate. He doesn't make that many mistakes, and he makes some big plays. Now, he's benefited by having some great receivers and a great halfback in Travis Etienne, but I've been very impressed by Trevor Lawrence. And the buzz we've heard, James, and it's not much of a surprise here, is that once he's draft eligible, everybody's going to want Trevor Lawrence, and I think for good reason. This guy is everything you want in a quarterback. We'll see how he fares again. He is just a freshman, so I don't want to put too much of an expectation on him, but they are very high for me. I think he's going to have a big game against Notre Dame, against a good Notre Dame defense as well.
Tom, we saw two true freshmen in the second half of the national championship last game. This newfound era of quarterbacks, which really kind of started last year. Jacob Eason came in 2016, got the role as a true freshman at Georgia, taken over by a freshman in Jake Fromm. He leads Georgia to a national championship game, and then a freshman who went to the national title game is taken over by another freshman in Tua. Now you have Clemson doing that the same this year. It is a new era in college football. Any team that has a big-time level quarterback should be able to go to the championship game, no matter how old they are. All
right, Travis Etienne, he is actually the guy I'm most excited to watch in this game because he is a monster on the ground, has put up in fantastic numbers, great in the red zone as well, 21 touchdowns. By the way, T. Higgins, get used to that name for next year's draft class, James. Clemson quickly becoming wide receiver U. Only 52 grabs, 800 yards, though he'll get matched up frequently with Julian Love. You'll see him on Sundays probably next year. The Notre Dame cornerback has made some big plays this year. Very reliable coverage, guys.
Sounds like the name of a 90s R&B singer, Tom.
Julian Love. All right, Love is not the only talented player on this Notre Dame defense. Jerry Tillery, you'll also see him on Sundays, disruptive from that defensive tackle spot. And Tevin Coney as well, the linebacker. A big tackling machine, not the biggest, maybe not the fastest guy, but he's also probably going to be a late day 2 pick, I think.
For sure, Tom. A lot of talent on both sides. Notre Dame's offensive line is where I am going to put a lot of my attention. They lost 2 big-time players to the NFL draft last year. Lost Alex Bars, probably the best lineman this year. So this is a...
Not to mention Nelson and McGlinchey last year.
Sure, yeah. Decimated line from where they were a year ago, but maybe overall a better line. I mean, from the Notre Dame I saw last year, even with those high draft picks, to the offense I saw this year, they have more gaps for the running backs. They seem to have a better passing game. Brian Kelly has revamped the offense. He's taken over the last couple of years the play calling out of his hands, Tom, put it in the hands of his offensive coordinator.
Long, who's done a fantastic job.
For sure. And I think you've seen the results being this man right here, Ian Book, 70% completion, 2,500 yards, Tom, 19 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions.
He can run too.
Yeah, he can run, yeah. And can he do enough to get 24 to 28 to 30 points on the board against Clemson's defense? If he does, he'll probably get some help from this man coming up. What do you like about Dexter Williams?
Everything.
Yeah.
When he and Book both kind of came in around the same time, and that offense looked totally different. He is their key piece on offense. Dexter Williams needs to have a good game. I like Ian Book, but if Williams doesn't fare well, I don't trust Book as much as I trust Trevor Lawrence if Travis Etienne doesn't fare well. And much like Clemson, Miles Boykin has stepped up as well as a very impressive wide receiver, a big-bodied frame. He's going to be a popular target for Ian Book. I would assume Trayvon Mullen is matched up frequently against him. On the defensive side of the ball, James, we've mentioned how great that Clemson defensive line is. Clelin Ferrell, which is actually how he prefers it to be pronounced.
Ferrell? Come on.
Like
Stop making things so difficult for us, you guys, with your Mitchells and your Furls.
disruptive. He's joined by Kendall Joseph, also on that front seven, the linebacker. He plays that middle linebacker role. He's immensely talented, maybe not the fastest guy, but if the defensive line can't get to the guys, Kendall Joseph is often the guy to make the play.
Kendall Joseph. I think that's how we pronounce it now. But
Okay.
another just immensely talented guy, Tom. I was looking at some mock drafts yesterday. I just kind of wanted to see where certain guys that are
near
going
the
pro.
top.
There are 6 guys from Alabama that are being projected as first-round draft picks, but Clemson's right behind them. If you look at first and second round, you've got 6, 7, 8 guys sometimes at Clemson. A lot of names that the average college football fan isn't even super familiar with, but linebackers, guys in their secondary that are first-round draft, second-round draft potential for these teams. You don't see that kind of NFL depth on Notre Dame's team, and I think that's just the general consensus why the spread is so high is because Notre Dame's talent is just not anywhere in the galaxy as thinking about pro-level guys as Clemson is this year. That's why they're the big favorite.
Let's get to our picks. Then you guys let us know in the comment section who you have, Clemson or Notre Dame. James, you've got Clemson winning 28-24. I've got a similar pick here, Clemson 27-21. And then producer Brett Scott has Clemson in a blowout 34-14. But you and I both have the Fighting Irish covering here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a closer game than people think, Tom. I think that the spread is too high for what I like with the suspension, with all stuff like, hey, guys are taking performance-enhancing drugs, multiple players in the team. That causes concern. That takes them away from their normal game plan. That makes the head coaching and the assistant coaches, they're thinking about stuff like that. They're telling recruits why it's not that big of a deal. They're calling moms of players and recruits and saying, hey, we're not giving this stuff to this guy. So that's a distraction, and that can either, it can either disrupt what they're doing or it can bring them together, right? So I think, Dabo's, entire program and his foundation, what he's put together, will be tested here with the suspensions of a star player, a couple other guys for something like performance-enhancing drugs, even though they are denying that they knowingly took it, Tom. The spread is now 12.5. The over-under 56.5. If you listen to me and you think that Notre Dame is going to cover that spread, though Clemson will win. Brett thinks it's going to be a blowout, time, and we are hooking everyone watching up with the best deal to bet on all the college football games, the college football playoff, NFL, regular season playoffs, NBA time. Bet DSI. Chatsports.com/bet. Use the promo code LIVE120. How you doing this year with your bets?
Oh, I'm doing good. I just hit my bowl game parlay yesterday. All the bowl games, 13x. Nailed
Tom,
it.
a guy who watches your other show, Cowboys Report, did a 7-team NBA parlay.
Yeah.
$700, won $70,000 through Chat Sports.
Yeah.
Use that promo code LIVE120. 120% deposit bonus. You put in $50, a free 60 sit there for you. 100, free 120, all the way up to $500 to get 600 sitting in your deposit in your account, ready to bet with. Bet DSI, Chat Sports, chatsports.com/bet.